Welcome to Everything Life Coaching. I'm John Kim.
And I'm Noelle Cordeau. We are the founders of Lumia.
And we're super passionate about all things coaching, and we want to share what we've learned from over a decade of coaching and training thousands of life coaches.
Let's dive into the science and magic of coaching.
Hello, everyone. Noelle here. Welcome to Everything Life Coaching. I'm delighted to be with you today. And today we are going to take on a topic called coaching in nature. So this episode is going to feature the techniques that we're going to use and things that we need to think about when we're really moving into a space of using nature as a companion, a guide, and an intervention in our coaching. And before we dive in, one of the things that I'd like to highlight is the source for this podcast, which is the ICF itself, the International Coaching Federation. Lumia is a level 2 program under the ICF, and I heavily utilize the ICF as a resource in my own work. One of my favorite places to visit is the ICF Community of Practice section in their learning portal. And that's where I came upon this concept of coaching in nature that is anchored within a broad scoped discipline that is called life and vision enhancement. So, for those of you who might be just starting out on your path of coaching and you didn't know that life and vision enhancement is a viable niche within the coaching space, it sure as heck is. And not only that, but there are so many different ways that you as a coach practitioner can embody this kind of work. And so today, let's get into it. Life and vision enhancement coaching and coaching in nature. How does it work? So from here, we're going to drill down on practices in nature and how to be with your client in nature. A powerful question that I'd like to kick off with to orient us all to our own particular relationship with this space is, what was a time in nature that you experienced? What was a time when you had a sacred, powerful, or meaningful experience in nature for yourself? And thinking about that, thinking about the characteristics of that experience will allow us to move into a space of how to use this with clients. For me, growing up on the Jersey Shore, I had access to the ocean with regularity, and the colors, the sunsets, the sunrise, the laughter of children on the shore, knowing that I always had a place of solace to go to if I needed space to think or space to be, or just even really beginning to understand the ocean as a companion is something that has shaped me and shaped the course of my life. And so oftentimes, if I'm in a space where I need to ask a deep question, I might go sit by water, or I might even visualize the beach that I grew up on so that I can take myself back to that place of warm comfort and partnership with the vast beyond. So, when we're thinking about coaching in nature from a technique perspective, what we're really doing is helping our clients bridge connection with themselves, with meaning making, and with a unique client experience. There has been a global trend of folks venturing out into nature, reconnecting with themselves. This was kicked off by the pandemic, and this is one of the many trends that we're seeing that has staying power, not only in the year ahead, but I believe probably over the next decade. And it's going to include being outside, being in groups, and specifically evening activities that embrace nature as a replacement for bar culture. So, coaches, take note when you do this work, coaches who in the space generally report that coaching in nature enhances the experience of the session. So we're thinking about coaching in nature as a technique set of enhancement. This could be linked to the fact that walking, clean air, and natural surroundings offer different stimuli than our indoor everyday lives. Nature also has different energetic waves than a city or an office building. And so being in nature will change your client's ability to access reflection. And research shows that being in nature enhances positive emotions. And really specifically, if we're looking at this emotional set that comes along with access to nature, it's joy, awe, optimism, and finally, courage. We know from the work of Barbara Fredrickson on positive emotions that each positive emotion provides not only its own chemical cocktail, but a unique thought action sequence that drives behavior and experience. So when we look at why we might want to manipulate positive emotions vis a vis nature in a session, it could be the enhancement of a specific emotion like courage or optimism that will complement the client learning in pursuit of self development and goal accomplishment. So, some examples of emotional sets that could enhance a client's experience within session and enhance a client's ability to accomplish their goals are joy. Frequently experiencing joy will drive a human to acquire better and more diverse skills. This comes to us from Barbara Fredrickson. Awe allows us to see ourselves as part of a larger whole, and optimism and hope bring increased resilience. This is also from Fredrickson's work. One thing that nature offers, of course, joy is part of it, hope is part of it, but awe is the number one thing that we know happens to us as a human species when we interact with nature. And there has been quite a bit of research done recently around the science of awe. Looking at the outcomes of awe have become especially popular in leadership coaching as a way of helping folks harness and attach to um, their own access to ethical decision making. Because when you are more deeply connected to the world around you through awe, 85% of the experiences that are driven by nature in this way lead to a greater connection with ethics. So, it's kind of a cool technique if you want to get into that space. Outside of leadership, thinking about utilizing nature can be used by all coaches to help clients connect to their vision when facing life challenges. Again, thinking about what it means to be part of a larger whole. This is especially important or can be especially impactful when folks are dealing with life transitions because so many times the way that we experience the landscape of our interior is internal. But when we get out into spaces where the physical landscape can mirror or represent metaphors that we're experiencing internally, folks feel that they're not alone. They feel, again, connected to a greater whole, and they often stimulate new ideas, new meaning, and feel a deeper sense of optimism, positivity, and generative ideas. So, this is coming from the embodiment of that experience. A client might say, I've run out of ideas. And actually going to a dry riverbed can stimulate connection and bridging the gap between the internalization of thoughts and the embodiment of the experience. Another example is if a client needs a bird's eye view, to literally have that client go hiking and literally take in a bird's eye view to externalize that experience and see what comes up. This has deep indigenous roots. Visions come to folks in nature, and there is a deep indigenous history of the type of vision that nature can inspire. Almost every single indigenous culture has some version of a vision quest. that has long held a tradition in health practices. And these have taken place at key times in someone's life where folks go out into nature, reflect on who they are, who they want to be, what their contributions to society can look like moving forward. And then they come back reformed into a new version of themselves, ready to present their learnings, their vision, their skills to their communities. There's also a more recent history of intentional time in nature being tied to broad based health outcomes. So, forest bathing is an example here. This is a widespread practice in Japan, and it has been codified in preventative health policy in Japan. In Western society, family doctors are now beginning to prescribe playing outside with children to parents versus medication for overactive kids. Now, I don't know that there's such a thing as an overactive kids. Kids are active, but I love that getting outside, playing with kids is becoming an actual prescription versus medication. If we're looking to where these theoretical roots are living in terms of our own practices, we can turn to eco psychology. This is a field of study that's represented in wilderness medicine, and all sorts of different modalities, especially with young people, are popping up. And we're seeing lots of adaptive therapeutic technique come out of this space for coaches. So, why this? Why now? Why is nature, why is being outside, why are doctors prescribing that folks play with their kids? Why has forest bathing become codified in public health policy in Japan? Well, in our time, we are facing an epidemic of stress, of burnout, of loneliness, of grief, and our brains do actually rest and recover in nature. So, in a very real way, this type of stimulation reduces stress and mental fatigue. Some powerful questions to get you started, or perhaps even to get your clients started, are to think about in this moment right now, what is your relationship with nature? How do you experience nature? These questions frame what being in a natural environment can do, and it's a great conversational starting point. When we think about this work, nature is a profound partner and it must be considered as such. This is why this topic falls into the technique category when we're thinking about coaching. Coaching in nature is about also being in partnership with nature. You are entering into a space that is not your own. You are in partnership with other living beings in the world. This is a give and take relationship. And coaches need to recognize that in partnership with nature, you and your client are gaining something that as individual humans, you cannot give to each other. And so there is a reverence there. When we work with nature as a partner, there also needs to be trust that nature will give to you and your client what you need. Nature will work with you as a coach to support you and to support your client. And equally important here is to recognize that some of meeting you where you're at might also be challenging because that is a metaphor for life. Sweat, bug bites, being stuck in the mud, rain. This is the way that life goes. And so taking the time, taking space to bring these metaphors to life quite literally can once again help us harness that awe that we need to understand that we are part of a deeper, greater whole, and then to attach to very real stress relieving qualities that we can only find in partnership with something greater than us. So, how do we set up working in nature as a coach? We can use modern and traditional processes to support our clients. And this could look like 3 simple stages that mirror the ICF coaching process of setting the agreement, facilitating the session, and then closing the session with reflection and next steps. So, this might look like the coach and client set the intention of what the client is really dealing with and wishes to get out of the session. Nature is often its own metaphor for our clients, and the visual stimulation will remind the client of their own lives. Coach and client co create a deeply personal journey of self discovery, and then the coach facilitates meaningful reentry and life integration. This type of coaching experience can be especially useful for clients when there have been major transformations or transitions. Role and identity exploration is a heavy hitter in the space of nature and coaching. New roles, new goals, soul searching, challenges, establishing self care, stress relief, and mindfulness practices are very impactful ways to utilize this modality. And then learning how to make self exploration a sacred time and a sacred experience is also part and parcel of this work. Access to nature can help the client to gain new awareness and a renewed sense of well being. And nature doesn't have to be fancy, it can be looking at a potted plant like the ones behind me. It can also be a video of nature to really inspire reflection. Or the coach can be on Zoom or on FaceTime, and the client can be out in nature. And likewise, coach and client can meet, and the client can go out into the nature, and then client and coach can come back together for a debrief. Some powerful questions for you to consider as a coach is: how have you used nature in your life and work? And what coaching goals are particularly powerful when you've explored them in nature? And then finally, we need to think about safety, because going out into nature takes a little bit of preparation beyond an average coaching session. So if you feel fear, trust it. Vet your clients. Walk trails ahead of time for guiding and knowledge. Be aware of your surroundings, like city parks. The client experience in nature could be 20 minutes, or we could be talking about something like multiple weeks of camping, retreat centers, or overnights. And when you're thinking about how to guide your client in partnership with nature, a physical safety check is really important. Is your client prepared to walk great distances or over uneven surfaces? Do they know how to find their way back? Does your client know how far they can walk? Can they gauge risk? Are they okay with getting their feet wet or sticking their boots in mud? How about steep slopes? And if you're doing this type of work with people literally out in the wild, consider the insurance aspects. There is outdoor program insurance for folks who do this work on a regular basis. Another thing to think about is psychological safety. Sometimes taking somebody into a natural environment can be something that they're really not used to. And so, while it's really powerful to get people out of their comfort zone, they also have the potential to experience an incredible range of really powerful emotions. And so, as a coach, yes, we are trained and we should be equipped to handle powerful emotions. But the question that you and your client should answer ahead of time is your client prepared to handle powerful emotions like anger or fear? What if memories come up? Can your client understand what's happening and then come back to being present so that you can continue processing the work of the session? To that end, emergency contacts are an absolute must. And if your client is doing this work on their own, they need to be sure to let someone know when they leave and when they come back. And if you're working with your client, same for you. You need to have emergency contacts set up to let people know when you leave and when you come back. And also maybe a checklist of things to bring so your client understands in advance. Check the weather, look into permits and entry fees at any parks or so on. So in closing, as we're thinking about how to build nature into your practice, I might say one-on-one coaching would really benefit from walk and talk, also from nature as a metaphor, getting out into spaces to look at things that remind you of your own life to externalize the issue for a fresh way of processing, using representations of nature, photos for reflection, um, utilizing our senses when we're out in nature, just even sometimes being in a forest and taking in the smell is so far beyond what we experience in our building structures on a daily basis that it can have a really profound impact on the way that we experience ourselves as human beings in a vast world, again, really contributing to the awe factor. Another thing that we want to think about as coaches is the pre-work and post-work to really set the stage for before, middle, and after. What have we learned? What's the intention? What was the journey and the experience? And then what is the reflection? How are we integrating this? If you're doing this work over a specific period of time, you might want to consider a full day retreat or something longer with your clients to really work on that process and integration. And also working with plants and animals and food is a great way to go about this. If we're thinking about groups and teams, retreats come to mind. Leadership development is, again, another really cool area of this work because awe induces those feelings of ethical consideration. This is also a great way for groups to experience field trips. It could be a fantastic way for organizations to use nature as a gathering point to launch a project or a program. And then national parks can be used internationally as really fantastic ways to delve into awe. I hope that you have enjoyed our time today. I think that this is a fascinating topic, especially as we're following all the trends of people wanting to be with each other, wanting to be outside, wanting to experience meaning, and all things that are beyond our senses in our regular everyday lives. So I hope that you will take the time to get yourself out into nature sometime soon and perhaps explore it with your clients. Thanks so much for joining me today. Take good care.
Thanks for listening to Everything Life Coaching. If you're feeling the draw to become a coach, head to lumiacoaching.com/everything. Explore a new career that brings fulfillment, gives you a true sense of purpose, and a bold community to do it with.
Lumia is ready to equip you with the tools, training, and community you will need to reach your goals. If you're ready to build a unique coaching business on your own terms while making an impact on the world at large, Lumia is the next bold step in your coaching journey. That's lumiacoaching.com/everything.
And hey, if you're waiting for a sign, this is it.